Well, thought we had a productive bye week. We had a chance to visit with you guys briefly in the middle of it, but to close out the week, we always kind of balance that between obviously getting our current roster, getting a jump on our opponent, and then also a lot of personnel-driven stuff. So, had some good meetings, had some good recruiting trips. We got in two really, really good days of just kind of Illinois versus Illinois, and then got into advanced days, including last night on Purdue. So to have that walking into Tuesday's practice tomorrow, hopefully a little bit ahead of schedule. Obviously, this weekend with the Hall of Fame, congratulations to obviously, Derek was a great player here when I was here, or when I played and coached the league, and then Robert Holcomb will actually be our guest captain. So we're really excited to be around him. He's actually a high school coach in Arizona now, so it's kind of been fun to reconnect with him. I know he's excited to get here and be a part of it as well. So I thought our guys, came in, flew around on Sunday night. We went out on the lights here for about an hour, and really, the part that you always look at during the bye week is trying to get you guys healthy, but also trying to get you guys fresh. We played five games. It took basically all those games. If you even look at Eastern Illinois, we kept the starters in all the way through the first three quarters, and Central Michigan was really a four-quarter game. So then obviously the three ranked opponents were tough battles all the way from start to finish. So to play five games, to get out of it pretty healthy, I think is a good sign. And then obviously to get some opportunity to get their legs back last week. We'll see exactly where we are going into this week, but I thought our guys accomplished that. Tank said the guys were great in the weight room, and we'll just kind of play this week out as it goes. Looks like it's going to be a beautiful day on Saturday, 2:30. Obviously a rivalry game, a battle for the cannon, all things from A to Z. But I think one thing this group has done a really good job is just focusing on the now, want to know mentality. Throughout the course of the first 5 weeks has got us to where we are today, and I don't think anything will change. So excited about the opportunity to play Purdue this week. With that, open up questions.
Bret Bielema said we don't have it yet. The cannon. How
Never had it, never saw it, never touched it, never smelt it.
So with Purdue struggling, obviously, how much does that help? Just hey, this is a goal. I don't want to know.
I understand the question, but I think when you're dealing in the Big Ten, there's no greater indication than this past weekend. On Sunday, I've always said I always take a minute to kind of look back at college football, and I couldn't afford to pass up on the opportunity to have three ranked teams, three top 10 teams that obviously had a setback over the weekend, and all three of those teams had kind of had premier wins, right? That and then just the way it all kind of played out, all of them were teams that were at home on the other team, the team that other than the Michigan game. Just a lot of different things that factored into it. I did look at three common factors of all those games. All three lost the turnover margin. All three of them almost had double-digit penalties. Obviously, we can't see what other teams do for penalties, mental errors, and MAs and MEs. But I just wanted to make those guys understand those three games and how they played out. And I did say, I made this point to our guys. Listen, if I can everybody always asks me, 40-year coach, what's the definition of a successful season, right? And I think unequivocally as a head coach, even when I was a coordinator, even when I was a head coach, what you want to do is get through a season without regrets, right? Without a moment of where I wish I would have done this or I wish I would have done that. In all my years of doing it, I haven't been able to do that yet, but I would say through 5 games, there's obviously some things that in every one of those 5 games, you would always go back and correct or do this a little bit better or do that a little different. But I have loved their approach. I love their demeanor. I love their attitude. I love their fight. I love all of the things that, in my opinion, are the things that go into being successful on game day. And, we're a 4-1 team that's trying to go 1-0 this week. But I think there's some teams that, as you go back and look at it, they probably regret what they maybe had done that day or the way that they had played or the way they approached the game. And right now I don't have that regret in any of our phases overall.
What are you seeing from Purdue, Bret, through their first 5, and obviously that coordinator change as well?
Well, obviously they started off very positive. I think the Oregon State game, they were very productive offensively as well, scored a lot of points and did a lot of things. Obviously the Notre Dame game is, kind of treat that as kind of its own little unique entity. I think I think everybody's been a part of those moments when games get away from them as it plays out. So obviously a lot of respect for Ryan and his staff. Know a lot of those guys on a personal level. So I think I know what this game is going to mean to them and to their players. And I think you can take in that when you go into Big Ten play, not just because we're playing for a Cannon Trophy or a rivalry or 2 games that we're guaranteed to play every year. I think this is a Big Ten versus Big Ten, and you got to come to play every weekend and prepare that way, and hopefully the best team wins on Saturday.
In terms of the tight end position, Brett, when you knew you weren't going to have Cole, I know Henry's been going through some things. Have you really been pleased with what you've gotten out of Tanner and even Carson and the rest of them?
I go back to when we decided to take Tanner. I just remember seeing him on film. Now he's a kid that had some Wisconsin roots. There was just something that jumped out to me. Knew some common coaches that had crossed paths with him and just talked about who he was, demeanor-wise, attitude. He came on his visit, and I'm like, okay, this kind of fits our DNA. And then just what he did since he's been here, just the evolution of his body, his strength, speed, development. I thought even last year, it was really evident that, Tip was our best, tight end, not only in line, but also kind of all the things we did, but really wanted to, if I could have one thing over, I wish that, we probably had a better complement to Tip last year just because we played so much 11 personnel. It didn't allow us to get in other personnel groupings. Tanner wasn't quite there yet, but last spring you began to see it. I remember Ben Miller coming up to me halfway through and he goes, hey, we were spot on with that evaluation. I think he's just a guy that's going to do a lot of really good things for us. So, yeah, Tanner's been extremely impressive. I think Goda has been a guy that, just continues to show up, a little bit limited with a hamstring, but even during fall camp and where he's at today. Henry Boyer getting him back full strength. He had a really big week last week. He's a big body that can run and does some really good things. So I've been stressing and pressing him really the last 3 weeks to make a step forward. So I like that room overall, and there's a couple other guys that I've added in that room as well.
We hear you talk about good teams, the 3 things, stop the run, run. What do you feel like you guys are
What's
at?
the third?
Cover kicks.
There you go.
I listen a little bit. What do you feel like you guys are at with those first 2 things through 5 games?
Yeah, big point of emphasis, right? When you're establishing the run game, first off, I think you gotta have your identity, right? Like, what do you want to do? How do you want to do it? What personnel groupings? But I know going into the Penn State game, coming out of it, from a pure running back standpoint, I think Caden Fagan, Aiden Lawfrey, Josh McCray, and then throw in the X factor of Khalil. Like, those 4 guys are very talented players, right? And what we got to do is put them in a position to let their skills show up, right? And offensively, I think one of the things that has been not a challenge, but one of the things that we've struggled with through the first 5 games is being consistent in the throw game and the run game. And that was a main task that I went very to go back and look and with Barton with that and Step and Dish and just kind of figure out how we can kind of put this thing all together, be more consistent in our approach. And then from a run defense, I knew Penn State was they had those 2 good running backs. They had the skill set of their offensive coordinator. Talked about we need to play good run defense, and obviously we did at times, but not near as good enough to be successful. I think the key thing for them was running. They're running for 240, and we're running for the numbers that we did. Obviously the sack yardage came into play a little bit, but obviously the discrepancy in able to run the football is a big part of that game.
That Penn State game aside, defense obviously improved quite a bit over the first 5 games. Can you point to 2 or 3 things where you think has helped turn that around this year defensively?
Well, I think first off, not to overstate the obvious, but Aaron is a second-year coordinator. I think I made, even though statistically my first year to my second year wasn't as good statistically, I think I learned some things in that second year better than my first year. So just to learn, every coordinator I've been associated with, they've always been better in year 2 than year 1. Like, there's just this process that you have to go through that is very unique to that moment. So I think Aaron's maturity there, but also his support staff, I think, without a doubt on defense, between Clint, Archie, and Corey, those 3 guys have brought a lot to the table that have helped Aaron grow. And just the chemistry in that room, Terrence Jamison and Aaron have been together a long time, known each other as players. So it all starts in the chemistry of that environment. I would tell you that I think, even we're playing a game where we're seeing a guy that, the success of what he had here really parlayed into the opportunity that he got at Purdue. And I think when I go back and think about all those things, all he talked about was the chemistry in that environment, defensive staff room, that made that moment come through. So, listen, there's a lot that goes into players and schemes, but if you're not together in that coaching staff with the way you respectively approach offense, defense, and special teams, you're not going to have success on the field. So I think that's the biggest one. The second one, I think, we lost some really good players, but the development and the emergence of our outside linebacker play, I think Alex Bray and Dennis Briggs inside have been very, very big part. They're most productive players. And in the development of T-Rod Edwards, I think inside really has helped us, but by far the biggest change has probably come on the back end of the play of Miles Scott, Xavier Scott, Torrey Cox, Caleb Patterson. T. Brooks has come around the last couple of weeks, so I think the development of the back end guys has been really probably the single biggest factor, other than just getting the cohesive unit of the coaching staff.
What'd you like about this past week? What was accomplished with the 2s, 3s look team getting the reps? Whether it pays off this week, this year, a year from now.
Well, I made a point on Wednesday and Thursday. When we had a lot of reps, it was 2s, 2s, 3s, 3s. The Devo guys were kind of in the 3s, but I've just been a part of this long enough. I was sitting there looking right at Art Sikowski, right? Like I just said, I challenged him on both days. There's a player right now on this field that just got the majority of the reps today that will have a factor in us winning a game this season, right? And I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know how it's going to come about. It could be on the second play of the first quarter. It could be on the second play of the second half. It could be on the second to last play of the game. At some point, somebody in this group is going to have to step forward for us to get a win in Big Ten play, and that's what I love about this environment is we have, a 4-game stretch of Big Ten opponents in front of us. Nothing more important than Purdue. For us to have success on Saturday is going to be about how we prepare our 1s, our 2s, and really those fringe guys that help us in a variety of different ways.
Coach, when you see a guy from your coaching tree like Coach Walters and the team's struggling, how does that make you feel, and what would be your advice to kind of help?
You know what? I appreciate the question, but I really don't. When you're in season, right? I've had 7 or 8 guys become head coaches, right? Like I love them, care about them, respect them, but it's so entrenched. Even like last week, like it's just everybody thinks bye week, but it's for myself, I was in town literally 2 nights during the 6-day stretch. Like you're just so immersed in what you're doing. We're playing Purdue, and that kind of brings it up, but it really is a non-factor.
This is probably a little off the radar, but like we've seen like players, other schools, redshirt and kind of opt to redshirt, I guess. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that and how, if at all, you consider maybe how you would handle it.
Yeah, well, you guys obviously interviewed me last week, and I brought it up for a reason, right? The whole element of having 5 years of eligibility, I think, would eradicate kind of that problem. But there are troubleshoot problems around that too, right? If you include a 5th year and what that means, but I would say it popped up in our building more than it's ever happened in my 16 years as head coach, and not even a question. So some of those haven't come to light yet, but I definitely had the conversations. I think just the world that we're living in now, the social media awareness. The other X factor is this whole COVID thing, right? Like, so you got guys that had extended high school careers because of COVID, right? And they got we have guys that are in extended college careers because of COVID. So until this kind of window cleans up, I think it kind of gets glorified a little bit more. But yeah, I think there's, I always go back to, like, even when I first came here, right? Like, we all know how you do, science experiments when you're young, right? Like you control one factor, right? Like whether it's heat, whether it's freezing, whether it's a chemical, like when the science experiments come together, you got one variable, you know what's going on. When you add 2 or 3, right, you never know how the results are going to play out. And in college football right now, the portal, the NIL, the changing world of NIL to revenue share, the addition of a 105-man roster and maybe more scholarships or maybe not, 4 years of eligibility versus 5, it's just a bunch of variations and factors that are very hard to navigate as a head coach, but it's also what makes our job great.
Right, you mentioned T. Brooks. Just what has led him, in your mind, to continually, week by week, become more and more of a factor?
Well, it's probably a good question for Terrence, but you guys probably have been able to Terrence, right? I just think a guy that has come in, there's always going to be an adjustment factor to how we do things. We really don't vary on how we approach things. I do think we put a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of thought into how we handle every player. Every player is a little bit different. They come in with a different resource, a different background. I don't think you can, paint every player with the same brush, but on the same account, you have to have some accountability to it, right? So I think, however he came in, the adjustments he's made, he's been very diligent. Corey Parker, I can't say enough about how he just handles every moment with Terrence, and also Torrey Cox. Like and Caleb Patterson, like those are three guys that are playing the majority of our reps who didn't even see the field last year, and all three of those guys are playing extremely well. So, and there's some Jaheim Clark, T. Strain, just a lot of guys that I think have been listening, buying, and growing without maybe reps on the field. But I think the best part about Terrence Brooks is everything that you've seen. It's only going to get better, and last week was a good indicator of it.
Coach, you get a chance to watch any football during this bye week?
On Saturday, yeah.
On Saturday, and what do you make of the Big Ten race and the race for the college football playoffs?
Yeah, as college football coaches, as college football players, I always encourage our staff and our players. The only way you can learn football is by watching football, right? And you're going to go through a lot of reps, but to sit back and Saturday, I was flying in Saturday morning from recruiting, so I didn't get a chance to watch the beginning half, but I got in town about 10:45, just in time to watch the Purdue game, obviously in Wisco. Kind of channel surfed in the afternoon, was able to watch some stuff in the evening, which is, to have teams that we're going to play in the future, but also just learn college football. But yeah, I think, the one thing that gets reinforced all the time is, the teams that take advantage of the opportunities they're given, who can kind of rise out of the moments of success and come out of the moments where there's been, a little bit of a setback. Those guys continue to win. So, the Big Ten race is unique in the fact that it's an 18-man race this year. It's never been done before, and I think to be a part of that is pretty awesome. Obviously, we had a setback at Penn State, but we're trying to take advantage of the opportunity we have with Purdue.
Brett, does this self-scout allow for you guys to scout your personnel and say, hey, there's
Yeah.
more competition here? How does that kind of play out?
Well, I think two things, Jeremy. First, what have we done well, and then identifying what we didn't do well, but why did that happen, right? Like I always, well, we did this, we had these many carries, and we got this many yardage, right? Okay, that's great. That's a math equation, right? Now tell me why it didn't work, right? Or why it did work. I think that's the part I always kind of stress to our coaches and our players, right? It's not the answer, it's the why, right? And I think to have a bye week after 5 games and to have a bye week after, a tough road game at Nebraska, a tough road game against Penn State, it's invaluable to have that bye week right there. Next year we got a 2-game bye week as well, right? So that I've just always felt that's the optimum season, is to have a 12-game schedule with 2 bye weeks, and this week it played into it, and it was interesting. I bumped into on the road to coach from Kentucky, and Kentucky had the same thing. They had a 5-bye, 4-bye, and just talked about the advantageous part of that is really good.
Just a quick follow-up on the 5 years of eligibility. Is that excluding medical red shirts? And more importantly, do you sense other coaches would join you in that you?
Yeah, so I became a head coach in 2006, and I distinctly remember in 2008 having a long conversation about the proposal to add a 5th year of eligibility. At that point, there was a lot of discussions about, what that could entail, how it could play out, and then kind of the modification came to this whole, all right, let's give them 4 weeks to play, right? And it doesn't count against them without penalty. And then after the first or second year of doing that, I remember Dabo Swinney specifically saying, can we get this to go to postseason play, because they actually need it most, right? Dabo was on several years in a row as a college football playoff coach, and I just thought it was incredibly insightful, right? Because, here's a guy that, that I'd witnessed. It was when I was out of college football, but they needed more players at the end of the year, just because that's when you get the most depleted by injury. And so the NCAA listened at that point and granted postseason play to be added into it. So now it's 4 regular season games and unlimited in the postseason. So it seems like we're trending to that direction. So if you were able to make postseason play, let's say you're getting a Big Ten championship game or a championship game of your conference, that's 5. Now you go into a window where you need to win 3 college football playoffs, right? If you want to win, and now you're talking about an 8 game, right? So what's the difference between 8 and 12, right? Like, I mean, it's just in my opinion, it makes too much sense. And then the way the medical red shirt, like, so we're dealing with that with Ashton Hollins, right? So Ashton Hollins, who is now going to be, actually tomorrow has surgery on his shoulder, because he played in less than 4 games, or 4 games or less in the first 6 games, he should be able to qualify for a medical hardship and get that red shirt, that medical season back, even though he's already took a planned red shirt year. So there's all kinds of math that gets involved. That's why I'm just kind of thinking 5 years, anybody can play and do what you do. If there's an opportunity to go for a 6 year, that's an appeal, but I think 5 would just clean it up for everybody.
Given the results on Saturday, number 1 loses to unranked, number 4 loses to unranked, 9, 10, 11 lose. Makes me think of this debate when NIL came in of like, are the rich going to get richer, or are the other teams going to have a chance?
Yeah.
You think there's a read on that can be made from like the results of college football right now?
Well, just because it's on the forefront of my mind a lot, right? Like, I give Josh a lot of credit, and our people, we've made a jump there, you know, but what I foresee hopefully changing is, you know, like I think the lowest in our conference is at 2 million, the highest at 21 million. That's not good math, right? Like that just doesn't add up to things being equal. So I don't know exactly how the answer's got to come, except for I hope that we're always kind of in the top third, right? Because then we can kind of put ourselves in a position to be competitive. You know, for me as a head coach, I've always kind of taken this value is like I know every day when I wake up, I got 24 hours just like the other guy, right? And how I use my time and how I evaluate and allocate our resources, as long as they're fair, like always just tell me the rules and let me play, right? But when you get into these scenarios where things can be a little bit out of balance, right? Then you know, those bring questions that sometimes they are just real clear-cut answers. And I appreciate the question, but also, you know, I'm not saying you want to have the highest number either, right? Because then you're dealing with situations and variables that probably come up on your radar. That it sounds silly, right? But when kids have an unlimited income, or they have an unrestricted ability to spend money, simple things like where they live, parking tickets, cars, the ability to travel during a bye week, right? Do all kinds of things that have never been up on anybody's radar are now present, right? Like I started getting all these things about this guy's got a dog, right? And this guy's got an apartment that doesn't allow dogs. Well, he's got to have a dog sitter while we're out of town, right? Like I'm like, Jesus, right? Like just when you have new situations, new issues pop up, and it's a never-ending kind of chasing the tail, or however you want to say it, right? Like it's fun. It's exciting. I love the maturity of our locker room. One of the things that I really think is advantageous that our coaches talk about all the time is the group of guys that we have. You know, I'm not saying they're all, you know, roasting marshmallows at night every together and singing Kumbaya, but I think our guys think right, act right, walk right. The GPAs that we've had, the lack of social issues off the field, right, like give us an understanding of what kind of character we have in the locker room. I think that's a lot of fun.
I've been a part of games like the Florida Rose or winning back the Axe. Like, just what is it like as a player in these trophy games, and does that kind of change as a coach?
See, Florida Rosedale is a pig, right? Is that
Yeah, it was
Minnesota? Yep. And then yeah, the Axe, it's Paul Bunyan Axe, Minnesota, Wisconsin, right? Shows how old I'm getting. I can't remember them all, right? But like, I think as a player, they do mean, you know, a certain amount of value when you have them. We've got an empty trophy case, right? That's the message to our guys, right? We're guaranteed 2 games every year, Minnesota, or, Northwestern and Purdue. Both of them are trophy games. Those didn't come by chance, right? So I think it's part of our conference. It's part of our history that I think is really cool. But unfortunately, I've never seen it, touched it, felt it, smelt it. Like I've never been able to hold that cannon, right? So until it's in our hands, all we do is talk about it, like and see pictures of it. And you know, I think that's a part of being in this program, hopefully moving forward.
But I'm curious on the offensive line, like we've seen you guys rotate times this year and even in your past, and do you feel like you're solidified coming out of that open week, or are you still kind of shuffling? I
think it's fair to say that we feel solidified at certain positions, but you know, where you've seen rotation, or there's opportunities to be in there. I love the fact that I think our guys are their own hardest critics, right? So I think that they not only ask to be better, but they also expect each other to be better. So there's a lot of peer pressure. I think peer pressure works both ways, right? Like there's a certain amount of things we like to apply peer pressure to our kids and make them understand the standard that needs to be set. But the best peer pressure comes from within the locker room, right? If I, as a head coach, don't have to worry about the way people are motivating to play well, like that's a huge step in the right direction. So I think our guys in particular, you know, especially I showed them quotes from James, right? Like I'm not gonna shy away from what was said about us post-game locker room, right? So to bring that to players' attention, I think is a very positive thing.
Thank you, guys.